Hey, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf, Daf 100 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, did you hear that? We're up to Daf Kuf. We're up to Daf 100. Friends, everyone give yourselves a pat on the back. Yeah, give yourself a pat on the back. We learned 100 Daf of Masechta Yevamos. That's like, friends, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, friends. Well, Daf Kuf of Masechta Yevamos, we wrap up the previous Mishnah, talking about different kinds of people and like truma and stuff, kind of. Whatever. And then we get to like another Mishnah also where like people get mixed up with each other. Yeah, kind of. Like who's the father, kind of, that kind of stuff. So, alright. So, we're going to start off Kuf, about 6-7 lines into the page. V'chulan, V'chulan mishagin loyin levatayim chutz mitami v'nosei isha sheno igenes loy. That we could send, that we can give truma to, meaning we just listed, the last thing we did at the end of the daf yesterday was we jumped back to Tzadi Tesam Beis, about 7 lines from the bottom for a second. There are 10 people that we don't give them truma at the granary. And we said, etc. And then we said, but all of them, even though they can't go and pick it up themselves at the granary, but we could send it, we could deliver it to their house. It's probably, honestly, the mice, it's probably easier. Walt. You guys use Walt? Do they have Walt in America? They have it in Eretz Yisrael. I'll be honest, I haven't used it. I don't know why I haven't used it. I don't know, maybe I should. Feels like a headache. I feel like it's not my thing. Maybe if I started using it, it would be better. But I don't know, what do I do already? I go to Agrippa Street, I buy some soup, I come home. What do I need Walt for? Anyways, I don't know. Maybe I just need to do it once. Fine, so so in all of these cases you can send it to their house, but except for a fellow who is Tomei, or a kohen who married somebody who is not allowed to marry. So we say that by an oral fellow who doesn't have a bris milah, so we could send him truma. My time, how come? Mishum de honest. Well, it's because we're talking about somebody who doesn't have a bris milah because his brothers died for bris milah, so therefore that's why he doesn't have bris milah. So he's honest, therefore we could send it to him. But for the Gemara, Tominami ha honest. But a fellow who's Tomei, he's also honest. He's also right, a victim of circumstance. So high nafish onse, v'high low nafish onse. Yeah, but the sort of onus situation of a fellow whose brothers died is more dire, is more significant than a fellow who just is a shtickle Tomei for a little bit. And then he becomes tar again. Tana Rabbanan, the Rabbi Stada, Eved va'isha, a slave and a woman. Ein cholkin loim truma b'veis hagranis. We do not give them truma at the granary. Uv'makom shecholkin nosen li'isha tchila. And in a place where we do divvy out the truma to women and to slaves, so we give women first. Ufochin also miyad, and then we let her go immediately. Maika Amar, what does this mean? Hachikam, this is what it means. That in the place where they are distributing meiser oni, right, a tithe that you give to poor people, nosen liisha tchila, so if there's a woman there collecting meiser oni, so we give it to her first, so that she could then just receive it and get on her way quickly. My time I'll call mishum zilusa, because it's embarrassing. So just you can give it to her first and let her go. Rav says that initially, if men and women would come for a din, for I guess a court case or tashailas, whatever it was, before me, I have a sharina tigud digava bereisha. So initially, I would first address the needs of the men first, and then get to the women afterwards. I mean, mitzvahs. I figured, well, men are chayiv in all of the mitzvahs, where there are some mitzvahs that women are pturis from. So therefore I should give precedence to the men. But once I heard of this shtickle Torah, that when it comes to Meiser Ani, we give to women first, so that they shouldn't be embarrassed. So I do the same thing by these court cases. First, I give priority to the women so that they can get what they need first and get on their way, and I get to the men afterwards. So we said that in a situation where you have a bas kohen or an ashes kohen, and her baby gets mixed together with the baby of a Canaanite slave woman. So we said, I got lost. So now if they now got older, so the Mishnah had said that they free each other, because we don't know which one's the Kohen and which one's the Eved. So they free each other, and then the one who's the Eved is now free, and the one who's the Kohen is still a Kohen. So basically you have a Kohen and a Yisrael. And like this, at least they can get married. Right? As they just have to get married to somebody who's able to marry a Kohen. But when one of them was an Eved, and we don't know which one it is, so then they cannot get married, because an Eved can't marry Yisrael, and Yisrael can't marry an Eved. Shichuru, iboy in, ilo boy lo. So in effect, the Gemara, 1 second. So this implies that it sounds like it's optional. If they want, what they could do is they could free one another, and then they could, get married. V'amai, why is it optional? Lisa shifcha enu yochel, baschorin enu yochel. I don't understand. If we don't know which one's the Eved and which one's the Kohen, so then neither one can marry Yisrael or a Shifcha. They're basically stuck and they can't get married. So says Rava, no, we force them to release one another, to free one another, and then they'll be able to get married to, as long as it's somebody who would be able to marry a Kohen. So just in case, whoever's the Kohen is marrying, somebody's allowed to marry. So the Mishnah had said that we apply to them the stringencies of a priest and the stringencies of an Israelite. In fact, the Gemara, what does this mean? The stringencies of a priest and the stringencies of an Israelite. It says for their flower offerings. What about their flower offerings? Nikmetzes keminchas Yisrael. You hear that? When an Israelite brings in a flower offering, so the priest, he chaps a fistful, and he puts that on the mizbeach, and then he can chap the rest. So that's when an Israelite brings a flower offering. But when a priest brings a flower offering, it's entirely burnt on the altar. So now, what we're saying is we apply the stringencies of both, meaning that we take the fistful, like the Israelites, but the Kohen is unable to eat the rest of the flower offering. That too needs to go on the mizbeach, or at least that's the havamina. So again, I'm starting from the beginning. So what does it mean that we apply the stringencies of Israelites and priests? It's talking about for their flower offerings, that we take a fistful as if it were the flower offering of an Israelite, and yet the remainder of the flower offering will not be eaten, just like if it were to be a flower offering offered by a priest. So what do you do? So what you do is you chaparan a fistful, and you put that on the mizbeach, and then you take the remainder and you put that on the mizbeach. Ikre Khan, perfect the Gemara. 1 second, you can't do that. I'll apply here the principle that kol shemimenu la'ishim, that whenever you have a flower offering, that part of it is going to go on the altar, right? They're going to take a kometz from it and put it on the altar. Harehu b'val taktiru. You're not allowed to burn the rest of it. So therefore, if we're saying that we're removing a fistful from this flower offering, we will be unable to burn the rest of it on the mizbeach. So how can we say that we apply the stringencies of Israelites and priests, and that we take the fistful and then we take the rest and put it on the mizbeach? If we're taking the fistful, then we cannot take the rest and put it on the mizbeach. So it says Yehuda ben Shimon ben Pazi, well, when he takes the remainder of the flour and he burns it on the altar, he's doing it with the intention of wood. He's doing it with the intention of wood. He's taking the remainder, he's throwing it on the altar as if it was just wood. Not as if it was a flour offering, as if it was just wood. Kirab Elazar, like Rabbi Elazar the Tanyas, we learn in the Brayso, Rabbi Elazar, Omer says Rabbi Elazar, the reach nichoyach I ato maile avol atamaile l'shum eitzim. That if you have epis a korban chatos that gets mixed together with the korban ola, so what do? So it says Rabbi Elazar, what you could do is you could take all of the limbs that got mixed together, right? Because if it's a chatos, so chatos only part of the limbs go on the mizbeach, the rest goes to the kohanim. If the rest goes to the kohanim, then you can't burn it on the mizbeach. So, but it gets mixed together with an ola, which entirely goes on the mizbeach. So what do? It says Rabbi Elazar, you could burn it with the intention of wood, that whichever limbs belong to the chatas, it'll just be like wood. So here also we can take the remainder of the flour offering and burn it on the altar as though it was just wood. Hanichel Rabbi Elazar. Okay, that's all fine and good according to Rabbi Elazar, who says that you could just burn it as if it was wood. But what would you do based on the opinion of the rabbis who argue on Rabbi Elazar and say you can't just do it with the intention of wood? So what would you do over here with the remainder of the flour offering? So the Ovid law, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. So the rabbis would say to do like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. The Tanya, as we learn in the Brayso, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Omer, hakomitz korev la'atzmo mashirayim mispazin al beis hadeshin. That this is talking about if a kohen, if a priest needs to offer a minchas chote, if he has a sin offering that he needs to that it's an olav yored, that if he's very poor, then he'll have an option to bring it as a flour offering. And in this case, right, the minchas chote shel kohanim, the sin flour offering of a kohen. In this case, the entire thing, right? You take the kometz, and then it's a machlokes whether you then take the rest of it, right? In this case, it all gets burnt. It's a machlokes if you then take the rest of it and you put it on the mizbeach, or if you take the rest of it and you put it on the beis hadeshin, and you put it just with all the other ashes. So the Ovid Lak Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. So the rabbis who argue on Rabbi Elazar and say that you cannot just burn, you can't just burn things as though it was wood. So they would say, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, the Tanya Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, Omer hakomitz karev la'atzmo v'ashirayim mispazin al beis hadeshin. Now when it comes to this minchas chote shel kohen, that the flour, the sin flour offering of a priest, so you take the kometz from it and you put that on the altar, and the remainder is sprinkled on the beis hadeshin. Is sprinkled with all the rest of the ashes. And even the rabbis who argue on Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, they argue they only argue with the minchas chote shel kohanim because that's a special situation where the whole offering needs to be actually offered, right? Meaning you take by the flour, the sin flour offering of a kohen, you take that kometz and you put it on the mizbeach, and in this specific case, you then take the rest of it and you put it on the mizbeach as well. However, but over here, where we're not sure, is this kid a priest or is this kid a Israelite? And therefore, or I guess not kid, meaning when they're adults, they free themselves, they free each other, and then we don't know, is it a Kohen or is it an Israelite? So in this case, we can't just burn all of it on the Mizbeach. So even the rabbis would admit over here, like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, that you'd be allowed to take the remainders and put it on the Beis HaDeshen. So that is what we would do over here. So when we say that we apply the stringencies of the Israelites and priests, what it means is that if they offer a flour offering, we first take the kometz, the fistful, and put that on the altar, and then the remainder, so we either like Rabbi Elazar, who says that you could burn it with the intention of wood, or like the Chachamim, who say that you just take the remainder and put it on the Beis Hadesh, and you put it with the rest of the ashes next to the Mizbeach. Alright, that sounds very nice. Says the Mishnah, Mishlo Shoasa Achar Bailo Shlosha Chodashim. So if you have a woman, we're going to have to figure out exactly what this means, that she didn't wait after her husband for 3 months. But essentially, there's a situation where this woman was with one man, and then less than 3 months later, she's with another man. She's pregnant, and we don't know who is the father. So you have a woman who is with one man, and then she was, within 3 months, she was with another man. She's pregnant, and we don't know who the father of the yingul is. V'nises v'yalda, and then she gets married and she has a yingul. V'nyadua im ben tesha larishon im ben shiva la'achron. We don't know, is this yingul a 9-month yingul from the first husband or a 7-month yingul from the second husband? Hayu labanim min harishin ubanim min hasheni. Now, if there were brothers from the first husband and brothers from the second husband, so we don't know who are the brothers of this yingul, right? So the first husband has kids, and maybe the yingul is the son of the first husband, and these are his brothers, or maybe his brothers are the sons of the second, the second husband, and those are his brothers. So chotzim v'lo miyabmin. So if if they, I guess if they all die, so one second. No, if he dies, that's it, right? If he dies, right? If he dies, right? The yingul dies. So now we don't know which are his brothers. Which are his brothers? Who needs to do yibum? We don't know. Is it the brothers from the first husband, the brothers from the second husband? We don't know, pashut. So everyone just does chalitza. You don't do yibum. Okay. And similarly, let's say, right, let's say they didn't have multiple brothers. Let's say this woman had one son from the first husband and one son from the second husband, and let's say the son from the first husband dies. So we don't know, is this son his brother or not? So he does chalitza, right? V'chein uloim choletz v'lo miyabim, do chalitza, do not do yibum. Now, what if it's slightly different? Now, what if this fellow had a brother with the first husband, right? If there's a potential brother from the first husband and a potential husband from the brother from the second husband, but that brother has a different mother than him. It was from a different wife. And therefore, let's say he's the son, let's say from the first husband, right? So if this yingul comes from the first husband, so then it's this other brother is his brother. They have the same father. But if not, if this yingul is actually from the second husband, so then this yingul shares neither a mother nor a father with this other yingul, and he's going to be completely potter. So again, so ayilo achim min harishin v'achim min hasheni. If there was a brother from the first husband, or a potential brother from the second husband, shlomei osa aim, but different mothers, who choletz umiyabim. So he can do yibum or chalitza. I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? Because if right. So let's say the brother from the first husband dies, so he could do yibum, and then, right, if it's his brother, so he's doing yibum. If it's not his brother, so then he's just marrying her, right? No big deal. So, right, so who, or of course he can do chalitza, right? So who chalitz miyabim? He can do either yibum or chalitza. Veheim echad chalitz ve'echad miyabim. But with the others, right? Right? Let's say this yingul dies, so now they, so one of them, obviously they can both do chalitza, but one of them can do chalitza, and then the other one can marry, right? But they can't. One of them does chalitza, and then the other one also could marry mi manavshach, right? Meaning this yingul died and he had a wife, so the first one does chalitza, and then the second one, kilu, if it's his brother, so he's doing yibum. If it's not his brother, so then the other one already did chalitza, so now he could marry her. Okay, fine. Fine. Yeah, obviously they can't both do Yibum because they can't both marry the same woman. Okay, fine. Now things get a little bit less tricky. So if one of the husbands, if one of the husbands was a Yisrael and the other one was a Kohen, so then this Yingel, we don't know if he's a Kohen or Yisrael, so he has to marry, whoever he marries has to be able to potentially marry a Kohen, because he might be a Kohen. The Mason, he can't become Tamei Mace because maybe he's a Kohen. If he does become Tamei, so we don't give him Malchus. Eno Ocha B'Truma, he's not allowed to eat Truma because maybe he's a Yisrael. If he accidentally eats Truma, so we don't make him pay an additional fifth. Ve'eno Cholik Ala Goren, he can't go and Chaparain Truma from the granary because he might be Yisrael. Umocha Truma V'Adam Shalo, if he has Truma, he could sell it and keep the money. Ve'eno Cholik B'Chodshei Kodshim, he can't he can't eat Kodshim, he doesn't get a portion of the Kodshim, of like Shlomim and things like that. Ve'nosnin lo, I guess the parts of the Shlomim and Chatas and stuff that would go to the Kohen. Ve'nosnin lo, Chatas, that depends if he's going to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but at least let's say not Kodesh HaKadoshim, but the Beis HaMikdash. But let's say parts of the Shlomim that like maybe the family of the Kohen eats. Ve'nosnin lo es HaKodshim, and you can't give him like a Bechor. Right? If there was a firstborn animal that you give to the Kohen, you cannot give it to this fellow. But if he has a Bechor, so then we don't force him to give it up. And he does not need to, meaning the jaw, the leg, the jaw, and the stomach of an animal generally goes to the priest, but this fellow doesn't need to give it to the priest because maybe he is a priest. And if he has a firstborn animal, so he doesn't need to give it to the priest, he could just let it graze until it gets a mum, and once it gets a mum, he can just slaughter it and eat it. When we apply to him the stringencies of the priests and the Israelites, now what if both fathers were priests, and he's definitely a priest, right? So who own an alem, so he is an onain for them. So on the day that each one of them dies, so he'd be unable to eat kodshim that day. V'im onanim olav, and they also practice aninus for him, that on the day that he dies, they would not eat kodshim. Hu enu mitami loim, he does not become tummy to them, because he doesn't know which one's his father. Vehem enon mitamilo, and they don't become tummy for him if he dies because they don't know, they don't know if he's actually their son. Huenu yorish oson, avalhem yorshin oso. Now he cannot inherit these two kohanim parents because if he goes to the brothers from the first husband, they'll say, prove that you're really from our father. And if he goes to the brothers of the second husband, so then, they'll say to him, prove that he's really your father. Okay. So, Avalem Yorshin also, but the fathers can inherit the kid because they'll just divide it in half, right? They don't know whose kid it is, so the fathers will just divide any inheritance from him amongst themselves. Also, if he strikes or smites his father, or if he curses his father, he's not chayiv capital punishment. Because we don't know if it's actually his father or not. Now he's allowed to participate in the avoda in the Beis HaMikdash in each of the mishmars of each potential father. But he doesn't get to chaparan any of the meat because each mishmar can just be like, prove that you're actually in our mishmar. Now if they're both in the same mishmar though, so then he could chaparine because he's in the right mishmar. All right. So now we had said in the Mishnah that in a situation where he's got like you have this kid is born, you don't know which father is his, and then each father had another son but from a different mother. So we say if this yingel dies, so one of them could do yibum, one of them could do chalitza, the other one does yibum. if he wants, they could of course both do chalitza as well. So dafka michalitz v'adu yabume, specifically you would first have to do chalitza and then only afterwards yibum, aval yabume b'reisha lo, but you would be unable to do yibum first, tikapaga b'yivam b'shuk, because you might potentially be sleeping with a Yevama, right? Meaning if this fellow dies and the first one does Yibum, right? The first one sleeps with his widow. Well, what if he wasn't actually his brother? He was the brother of the other one. Well, then here's a widow who needs to do Yibum and she's now sleeping with somebody who's not her Yavam. So that'll be a problem. So first you have to do Chalitza, and then the second one could do Yibum, and then Mimanav Shach. If it's his brother, so then he's doing Yibum. If it's not his brother, so he's just marrying a woman who is no longer has to do Yibum because she already did Chalitza. Amr Shmuel says Shmuel, Asar Kayanim, Oimdim. Oh, so says Shmuel, you have 10 priests, and they're standing around. Okay, they had the day off, they were standing around. And one of them leaves, sleeps with a woman, has a baby, Havalad Shtuki. We don't know which priest it was. So, the child is a Shtuki. My Shtuki. What do you mean he's a Shtuki? So, if we say, well, if we don't know which Kohen it is, so then he'd be unable to inherit his father. Pshita, that's obvious. We don't know whose father is. Obviously, he can't inherit him. Rather, it means that we don't allow him to be a Kohen. We don't allow him to act as a Kohen. Even though all 10 of them were Kohanim. Even though all 10 of them were Kohanim, we do not allow him to do the Avoda. We do not allow him to do the Avoda. Even though all 10 of them were Kohanim, we do not allow him to do the Avoda because we don't know which one is his father. My time, how come? Because the Pasuk says, Vaisalo Lazar Achorav, right? The Pasuk says, I think in Parshas Pinchas, that it will be for him, Lazar Achorav Briskun Asolam, right? The covenant of priesthood, right? So Vaisalo Lazar Achorav, we need that the child of a priest be after him, meaning we have to know who the father is. And in this case, we don't know who the father is. And even though all 10 of them were priests, so this kid is definitely a priest as well. But nonetheless, you have to know who your father is. And here that's not the case. So therefore, he cannot do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Maskif Rav Papa. Papa asks a question. Elamiata, Kabi Avrom, Tichsiv lios l'chol elokim l'lazarucha acharecho. The Eibishter says, I'm going to be for you as a God and to your children after you. What's the Torah saying? What exactly is he saying? We said a second ago that by Kohanim it means that you have to know your father as well. What's he saying by Avraham Avinu? What the Eibishter is saying to Avraham is, do not marry an idol worshipper, an Ovedes Kochavim or a Shifcha, because your child will go after her and will not be a Jew. That is what the Eibishter is saying to Avraham Avinu. Meisvei, we have a kasha on Shmuel. Right? Shmuel had said that you have these 10 priests. One of them has a baby, and we don't know which one it is. So then the child cannot do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash because we don't know who the father is. But Meisvei, we have a kasha. Rishon Roi Lios Kohen Gadol. That the first one is able to be a Kohen Gadol. So this was talking about when Yibum happens within the first 3 months, right? So if you have Reuven dies and then Shimon does Yibum within the first 3 months. So we say, right, if they're both Kohanim, this child can even be the Kohen Gadol. But I thought we need to know who the father is. And this child can be either Reuven's child or Shimon's child. So we don't know who the father is, and yet we're saying, look, both of them are Kohanim. The child can even be the Kohen Gadol. So look, we say that the need to know who your father is midir abonon v'kras machta ba'alma. And the pasuk that we quoted, that is only an asmachta. So it's really midor abanon. It's not midor raisa that you have to know your father is in order to be, practiced as a kohen. And when the rabbis made their gezerah that if you don't know who your father is, then you cannot practice as a kohen, that was specifically by znus. For example, the 10 kohanim were standing around bored one day, and one of them decides he's gonna make a baby. So in that situation, if we don't know who the father is, so then the kid can't do the service in the temple. But situation of yibum, where there's a mitzvah, but it was within 3 months, so you don't know who the father is, the child can even be the kohen gadol. One second. In fact, think about 1 second. But is it really the case that by znus the rabbis say that a kohen born out of znus is unable to serve in the temple? But we learn in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is talking about, let's read that again, a woman did not wait after her husband. What does after her husband mean? We're about to get into that. It says she didn't wait after her husband for 3 months. V'niseis v'yalda. And she got married and she gave birth. Alright. So ma'achar baila. So what's our Mishnah talking about after her husband? Ilema achar misas baila. So if it means, she was married to one husband, right, Ruvain. Ruvain died, and less than 3 months later, she married Shimon. Well, 1 second. Ema Seifo, if we go weiter in the Mishnah, what does it say? Who own in Aleim ve'im own in Allah? That if either Ruvain or Shimon die, so then this Yingol would not eat Kodshim as long as he's in Onain. And also if the Yingol dies, neither Ruvain nor Shimon would eat Kodshim that day. Right? They're Kohanim. So B'Shlomo, who own in Aleim, so I understand what it means that on the day that, essentially Shimon dies, the truth is the Gemara is about to explain, right? But I understand what it means that the Yingol would practice Aninus for both Ruvain and Shimon. Nishkachas la b'nisuin d'sheni. Well, if the second husband, if Shimon dies, then that day the Yingol would not eat Kodshim. He would, as an Onain. Velikut atzom is the common. Even Ruvain, if they, inter or disinter his bones and move him some other place, so that day he would practice, the Yingol would practice Aninus and would not eat Kodshim meat. So I understand what it means that the Yingol will practice Aninus for both Ruvain and Shimon. But Eloheim onanim olav heichim mishkachasla. I don't understand. How could you have it that both Ruvain and Shimon would practice Aninus if the Yingol dies? Kamaha misle. Ruvain's already dead, right? Meaning if we're saying that Ruvain died, and then, Sarah, the widow, marries Shimon, some other guy Shimon, within 3 months. So what does it mean that now that there's a Yingol, so both Ruvain and Shimon would practice Aninus if the Yingol dies? Ruvain's already dead. That's the whole thing. He was the first one to go. It's Vela begrusha. Okay, so let's suggest it's talking about a grusha. Ruvain is married to Sarah. They get divorced. Less than 3 months later, she gets married to Shimon, and they give birth. They have a baby Yingol. Okay, Vela begrusha. Mayachar baila. Achar get baila. What does it mean that Sarah gets remarried after her husband? It means after Ruvain gave her a get, so then within 3 months she marries Shimon. So Ema Seifa, but if we go weiter, what does the Seifa say? Hu ein mitame loim ve'ein einon mitame lo. He says that the Yingol would be alright. So if Ruvain or Shimon die, the Yingol would be unable to be tummy for them. And also, if the Yingol dies, so then something just broke. One second. Something just broke. Excuse me. Okay, I have no clue it broke, but I don't think it was ours. Doesn't look like it was ours. Alright. So we say that, okay, fine. So we're talking about where they get divorced, and it says that if either Ruvain or Shimon dies, then the Yingol would be unable to become tummy to them. And if the Yingol dies, so then neither Ruvain nor Shimon would be able to become tummy to him. Now, B'Shloma ein mitamin lo l'chumr. So I understand why in the case of divorce, right, Reuven and Sarah got divorced. Within 3 months, she marries Shimon. They have a yingel. We don't know who the baby's father is. So I understand why neither Reuven nor Shimon would be able to become tamei to the yingel if the yingel dies, because the cholchad v'chad dumalav breu, because neither one knows for sure that the yingel is their son. So they're kohanim. They can't necessarily become tamei to him. Elahu in mitam Elohim amai. I don't understand why the yingel should be unable to become tamei to both of them. Okay, I understand why if the second one dies, the yingel would be unable to become tamei for the second husband, because let's say he was the son of the first husband, so then he's just a regular kohen, and he's unable to become tamei to Shimon, who's not his father. But let the yingel become tamei to the first husband, mimonavshach. Ibrei hu shapir tamei. Well, if the first husband is actually his father, so he's becoming tamei to his father. V'bar basru, and if he's the son of the second husband of Shimon, shapir tamei le dechalalu. Well, then the yingel would be able to become tamei to Reuven, because if he's the son of Shimon, then that means that Shimon, who's a Kohen, married his mother, who's a divorcee, and that's not allowed, which means that the yingel is a chalal. So Memele could become tamei to the first husband anyways. Either it's his father or he himself is a chalal, in which case he could become tamei anyways. So therefore, we're struggling to figure out what exactly is achar baila in the Mishnah. We said it can't be that the first husband died. It can't be that the first husband and Sarah got divorced. Rather, we want to say that it's talking about znus, that Sarah was an unmarried woman, and she had a relationship with Reuven and with Shimon within less than 3 months of each other. Umay achar baila, and what does it mean that after baila, achar boala, after she slept with Reuven, she then slept with Shimon within 3 months, and they had this yingel. So we're talking about znus, and the yingel doesn't know who his father is. Vikatani seifa, and nonetheless it says ola b'mishmar shelze v'shelze, that he'd be able to do avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. If right, it says that he could work in the Beis Hamikdash during the mishmar of each of the fathers. Right, if they had different mishmaros, then he wouldn't be able to eat the kachim. If they had the same mishmar, he can, whatever it is. But we see that even though this yingel doesn't know who his father is, and it's talking about a situation of znus, nonetheless, he's able to avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Friends, what do you think about that kasha, huh? B'tiyuvta de Shmuel. It's takan kasha on Shmuel, because Shmuel has a situation with this kohen who's bored, makes a baby, and we don't know which kohen it was. So we said that this kid is not allowed to do the service in the temple, because he needs to know who his father is in a situation of znus. But yet our Mishnah, we're saying, is talking about znus, and we're saying that he is allowed to do the service in the temple, so it's a kasha on Shmuel. Omer Rav Shmaya says, or Shmaya, well, you could say that our Mishnah is talking about b'mima enes. It's talking about mima enes. It's talking about a girl who was a ketana, and she says to Reuven, I'm out of here, and then she gets married to Shimon, and they have a yingel. That is what it's talking about. But mima enes mika yalda, but is a ketana able to have a baby? V'atani Rav Bevai kamed Rav Nachman. Rav Bevai taught before Rav Nachman, shalosh nashim mishamshus b'moch, that there are 3 situations where a woman would be able to have relations with some kind of something to prevent her from getting pregnant. She could put something inside of her to prevent her from getting pregnant. Ketana mu'uber sumenika, a ketana, a pregnant woman, as well as a nursing woman. Ketana shemitasaba v'somus, a ketana, maybe lest she becomes pregnant and dies. Mu'uber shema teasa uber sandal, a pregnant woman out of concern that maybe if she gets pregnant a second time, then the second fetus can crush the first fetus. Menika shema tigma has been of Yevamos, and a nursing woman, lest she become pregnant and she will be unable to produce sufficient milk and her current baby will die. Ve'ezo iktanen, what's considered a minor, mibas achas esrei shana of yom echad ad bas shtem esrei shana of yom echad, from 11 years in a day until 12 years in a day. Pachos mikan o yaser akain, less than 11 years in a day or more than 12 years in a day, mishameshes kedarka, then she just has relations normally. Ve'oleches and divrei Meir, that's the opinion of Reb Meir, that before 11 in a day she won't be having children, and after 11 in a day, and after 12 in a day, it's not dangerous. The Chacham say that no, in any situation she could just have relations in without any kind of contraceptive. I think maybe that's what I was thinking of. And if the Eibishter from the heavens to have mercy on her, Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Shomer Psoim Hashem, that the Eibishter takes care of the foolhardy. So Ketanis can't have children anyways. So how could it be talking about Mima Enes? So where am I? Mishkachasla, we could find it b'kiddushay Taus. Well, if it was kiddushin, that was a mistake. For example, they made a Tanai in the kiddushin, a condition in the kiddushin. That condition was never met, and then it kind of retroactively the kiddushin breaks up. So it's like Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, Damar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Shmuel v'lo nispasa asura, that if a woman has an extramarital relationship and it's consensual, so then she cannot remain with her husband. Hanispasa mutaris, but if it was not consensual, then she can go back to her husband. V'yeshcha acheres, but there's another situation where it says v'hi lo nispasa, saying that, implying that there's this situation, but there's another situation shafal pisha lo nispasa mutaris, that even though it was consensual, she would be permitted. Ve'ezo zosa kiddusha kiddushay tos. This is talking about a woman whose kiddushin was by accident. She'afilu bina murkav la aksefa mima enes v'leches la. That even if her, she has a child, even if she's older and she has a child, but it was kiddushay tos, so then she can just leave that marriage. And in that situation, she would be able to have a child, and that could be the situation that we're talking about in our Mishnah, where she was with one husband, and then less than 3 months later she's with another husband, she has a child, and we don't know who the father is. Okay, so it doesn't need to be talking about Znos, it could be talking about Mimenes. Fine. Friends, that was the Kuf of Masechta Yevamos. We wrapped up the previous Mishnah. We saw what it means to say that when you have in the first Mishnah we're talking about where you have a Yisrael and a potential Yisrael and a potential Kohen and a potential Yisrael, because he was an Eved and then they freed each other. So in that case, we say that we apply the stringencies of a Yisrael and a Kohen. We said that that's talking about a kometz, right? Talking about a flour offering, and that you take a fistful as if it was a Israelites, and you also do not eat the rest of it as if it was from a priest. And the question is, what do you do with the rest of it? We saw the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, who says that you could just burn it as if it was wood. And then we saw the opinion of Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who says that you would scatter it onto the Beis Hadeshin, onto the ashes that were next to the Mizbeach. And we learned about a situation where we had different. Right, you have a woman who was with one man, and then less than 3 months later she's with another man. We don't know who the father is, and all sorts of nafkaminis around that. We saw the opinion of Shmuel, who says that by Kohanim, in order to be able to do the service in the temple, you have to know who your father is. And if there's a situation of znus and you don't know who your father is, then you would be unable to do the service in the temple. We wanted to bring a question against Shmuel from our Mishnah to say that our Mishnah is talking about znus, and our Mishnah says that you'd be allowed to do service in the temple. But we then saw an opinion that could say, well, our Mishnah could be talking about Mima Enes, which means that maybe we could uphold Shmuel's opinion, which is by znus, and you don't know who your father is, you'd be unable to do the service in the temple. Friends, that was Daf Kuf from Masechta Yevamos. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.